Hey, witches. Welcome to my third chat. I'm very excited. This is like a thing now that there's the magic number of three. Uh, I'm Jenny C. Bell, and in today's chat, I'm going to share my journey with fortune telling or divination, card reading, all of those things. So, as always, make yourself cozy. Maybe pour yourself a cup of tea or iced tea. It's a little warm here today. I could also refer to myself today as Farmer Jenny. I am wearing overalls for the first time in a while. I tend to wear all black, but I sort of redid the closet, spring cleaning and all of that, and found some Levi's overalls and wearing them today. So maybe you want to put on your overalls too. We can be twins. Okay, so back to my journey with fortune telling. So I do call myself a fortune teller. I don't use the term psychic or medium. I do believe that there are psychics and mediums. I do believe that I have moments where I am psychic and I am also talking to people who have passed on. Especially for some reason, when I give people Reiki, I have a lot of loved ones come through, especially especially pets and grandmothers. And I don't know if that's because I personally connected so much to my grandmothers and I know they're with me that they're like, oh, I'll bring this other person's grandma in for them too. I don't know. But, and I'm an animal person too, so I'm not sure. But I don't use those terms because I like to use cards or charms or something physical in my fortune telling, and I'll get to that in a moment. I do believe that everyone can read cards. Whether you call them tarot, doesn't matter to me. You can use playing cards or oracle cards, but I believe everyone can have the ability. That's something that's isn't necessarily you're not born with a gift. Like everyone can just learn to read the cards for themselves. And I also believe that everybody has the ability to open up their clair senses, right? So we're very familiar, I think, with the term clairvoyant, and that's someone who receives information through seeing it, right? And I actually think that's pretty rare because there are people that have a hard time imagining things and seeing things within their mind anyway. But those people will get insights through like pictures or symbols. And then there are people that are more clairaudient. They hear, right? They hear like snippets of music. That happens a lot to me when I'm doing readings. I often I can sing okay, but on cue, not so much. But I will often refer to a song in our coven and be like, "Oh, for some reason this song's coming up," and I just share that because I think, and maybe it means something to somebody. And I actually one time did a reading for someone who I kept hearing that song, That Girl Is on Fire. And I told her, like, I just don't know why this is really coming through. It was a year ahead reading. And then, like, 6 months later, she reached out with this long couple paragraphs explaining how that song actually really did fit and why. So it was a real good confirmation. So there's clairaudience. There's people that are able to just get a sense, right? So they just have this you get this feeling, this sense. And I feel like that honestly is probably the most common. People will say, I just had a feeling this would happen, or my stomach, I had butterflies, or I had a gut feeling. It's like we can't always articulate where the feeling is or how we got it, right? It's like that sixth sense. And I think a lot of people have that naturally, that intuition. I just felt this is going to happen, or I knew you were going to call me, right? And that's more of like a bodily sensation. There are people that their clair senses work with a sense of smell. That's, I think, really rare, but it's happened to me more with ghost hunting than I would say with like divination and card readings, where you can smell like cigarettes or someone's perfume. Sometimes when my grandma Jane first passed away, I would smell her lipstick. Her lipstick had this very distinct smell. It smelled yummy. Like as a kid, I wanted to eat it. And I would smell that, and I knew she was with me. And I think that happens a lot to people too. They'll have a loved one pass away and be like, I still smell their perfume, or if they smoke cigarettes, I smell cigarettes. And that came through another time with another loved one. Could smell like pipe smoke. And it was another sign from somebody. There are people that have a combination of all of them. and different, have these kind of different feelings. There are people that it's like if they touch something, if you watch Tyler Henry, adore Tyler Henry, but people will often bring him objects that belong to loved ones who pass and he'll hold them. And he often will say, like, sometimes other people come through and he's holding them, but something about that touch helps. And that's really fun if you're into experimenting with your own kind of psychic abilities, is going to an antique store or thrift store and picking up different items with a friend and trying to get a sense of who it belonged to, right? Like holding it in your hands, closing your eyes, and asking, like, who did this belong to? And it's a good way to stretch that kind of psychic muscle. So, in my opinion, anybody can read cards. It's some people are better at it than others. Some people it's more natural than others, so it's easier for them. And I think everybody can have the ability to open themselves up to their clairsenses. And I do feel, for the most part, that people who are more gifted or have worked on opening it up more, open these gifts more, a lot of times the gifts aren't for them personally. Sylvia Browne, famous psychic, had a quote about that, basically like, the gift's not for me. I can't use it for myself. And again, with Tyler Henry, a huge fan, he had a show on Netflix before the live show where it was more about his life, and he could not use his gift to figure out something for his mother. And it's very hard if you read cards. A lot of times people will start practicing with loved ones and they're like, I don't know if I'm very good at reading cards. Well, it's harder to read for people because you second guess yourself. It's harder to tell them maybe the truth. It's harder to point out things that maybe you don't want, you may feel like they won't receive well. It's just harder. And it's also harder because your energy is entwined. So sometimes when people are first starting to read cards, they'll read and kind of mix up who they're reading for. They might actually be reading for themselves. So I just think, we all have the ability. I'll talk about my own little journey though. I just wanted to kind of get that out there because if you're listening to the show and you're thinking, well, I don't know, I could never read cards or whatever. I just don't think that's true. And I think you can pick it up at any age. We have a lot of people in our coven who are around my age and are learning to do these things for the first time in their life and are doing great. So it really, it's any time. You can learn this at any time. So I have always been interested in the weird since I was a child. I loved watching like Sylvia Browne when she would be on like Montel Williams. I loved watching her. I watched Crossing Over with John Edward. We had a Ouija board. My mom was really into astrology and numerology. She kind of drew the line at tarot cards, like personally. She did take me after I begged her, to a reader at the age of 16 and then let me get a reading with her, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But, growing up, I knew it was weird, but it wasn't like taboo. It wasn't unallowed. I did not get any tarot cards though until the age of 18. There was a superstition that you had to be an adult and they had to be gifted to you. So I picked out the Universal Weight, which is illustrated by Pamela Coleman Smith, but prettier, I think, color-wise than the Rider-Waite. And I did all the things, right? Picked it out. My mom gifted it to me for my 18th birthday. I got the red silk to keep in the wooden box. I cleansed them. I went through the cards. I read books. I tried to memorize. And by the way, I'm not good with numbers. I actually it wasn't until college I had a professor who's like, I think you have dyscalculia where you mix up numbers. So numbers and I, not really. So that was a struggle trying to memorize the numbers. Also, the imagery in the Pamela Coleman Smith art is very old, and I had to learn the Kabbalah. Like that was part of my studying. I read the Royal Road and I started learning the Kabbalah and started learning some of the Hebrew symbols because that's throughout that tarot in particular. I had to learn Roman numerals. Like there was so many hurdles for an 18-year-old who didn't trust her own intuition, right? It was this belief in the 90s, like for the most part, is you have to study. The tarot is an honor and you have to study it. And at that time, it was still a mystery where it came from. One of the books I read said it was from ancient Egypt and, it's all this kind of fun stuff. So definitely had more mystery surrounding it. There weren't as many decks out there. I didn't even know what an oracle deck was. I did prior to that try to read playing cards, and but again, I'm not great with numbers. And I did try to read runes, but I have, as far as I have no like any heritage that would be have used runes in my bloodline. It just did not feel like it was for me. And I still only really use runes for magic. I don't read them unless they're a card deck, which is different. So for a long time, I had that one deck forever, for a long time, since I was 18. I used it, I studied, I really treated it like a class or a course. I didn't think it was something like I could just use my intuition. I had to learn the meanings from the books. And the reason why I'm sharing this is because I don't think that's the right way to approach it. I do think that you should read the history and you should learn the symbols and all of that. It's really fun. But I don't think that's the way to read it. I think the best way to read it is to see it as a story that's being unfolded in front of you when you read multiple cards. And I'll get to that in a moment. So anyway, at 16, I got my first card reading. It was this in New Jersey in this woman's kitchen. She was this middle-aged Italian woman. My mom went for herself, but I begged her to take me with her. And I was like, please, please, please let me get one. And the lady's like, I'll do 3 cards for you. Ask me anything. I was like, tell me the loves of my life, right? I'm 16. But let me tell you, this woman actually predicted all 3 of my major relationships, and the last card was my husband, who I'm still married to, described as a fair hair intellectual with a love for history. He was a history major and a history teacher. He does have blonde hair and blue eyes. I mean, it was kind of crazy, and it made me just I wrote it all down and I was so excited. And to me, I didn't know what I was looking at. I don't remember the cards, but I do think they were like either all pages, kings, and knights that came up because I remember them all being faces, which if you read the tarot, you know that's actually pretty rare. So I feel like it was spot on. I have been told since from other card readers and psychics that I have a lot of guides who are very pushy and very chatty. So it makes sense that they would have come through and really given her the best kind of answer. So I would read really just for myself and for loved ones. I would read for like major changes in life. Like I remember when I was pregnant with my son, I was just wanted to make sure I had a miscarriage and I wanted to make sure everything would be okay. And I got the son card. And I was like, okay. So I already confirmed, I already thought it was a boy. And then I knew he'd be fun, and that confirmed everything for me. And I really do think of him as like a light in my life for a lot of reasons. So that card really fit him. I kept a journal of every single reading I've ever done. I still have it. It was like this fake faux, it's like a faux leather journal with like ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics. I think they're also fake. I mean, I thought it was cool when I was 18. I'm like, this is so magical. Like see something in it, Indiana Jones. But hindsight, it's pretty hokey. So anyway, I did do that and I kept everything and I never really advertised it. There was one Halloween party where I did tarot readings for people, but it made me really nervous because I was still not trusting myself and always referencing the book, and I felt like that made me look unprofessional. And I just kind of continued that way for a long time. And I have 2 interesting, well, one I think is the most interesting story. So I had a friend who had a series of like horrible things happen to her. I'm not going to say her name, but she basically had a car accident. She broke her leg, and she was a teacher, and she seemed to have like, she was a really good teacher, as far as I understand, but she was having like terrible reviews as a teacher, and it seemed like she was going to get fired. And then her baby was really sick. And also her boyfriend left her, who was the baby daddy. It was like all within, now that I know more about witchcraft magic, I'm taking a course on Olympias. Now that I know more about things, I know that that was definitely a curse. And she came to me, was like, I know you know stuff. Like, I never told her I was a witch, but her mom and I would talk a little bit. Her mom definitely did witchy things. Um, she's like, can you help me? And so I did a tarot reading and I discovered that there was a curse placed, but not on her. It was actually on her child, the baby. And it was her mother-in-law. that put the curse on the baby because she didn't want them to be together and wanted the boyfriend to leave. And so I told her that. And sure enough, she found graveyard dirt in the home. And I suggested that she go to a healer and excuse my terrible Spanish, like a curandera. I said, I don't know much about that, but I do know about like the egg rolling and things like that. And I really feel that you need to take your son there. And sure enough, she took him there. And she said, yes, there's a curse placed on him. They did a bunch of limpias and everything's fine now. But she would, for like years after on his birthday, she would just send me a message like, thank you for having him here. Like, thank you. She really felt that without that reading, she wouldn't have had the insight that it was him that had the curse on him and to go to get the healing. And she really thinks that maybe she might have lost him because he was really sick with like a fever for a long time. So yeah, that was very validating, but at the same time, I was still like referring the book because I was not trusting myself. So fast forward to 2019, 2020, actually pre-pandemic, I discovered Kyle Gray on Instagram. I was still new to like Instagram and he's the angel whisperer. And I took a free class with him and it was like to meet your guardian angel. And at the time I was reading A Course in Miracles. So I was always, for a long time, I was very anti anything woo-woo. I was witchy and I really delineated like I'm witchy, I'm not new age. Like I wasn't into that. But reading A Course in Miracles was healing some kind of wound that I had against Christianity. And it made me more open and more curious. And so I was like, sure, I want to take this free class to meet my guardian angel. Let's see. And I was so shocked that in the meditation, I immediately saw my guardian angel and received his name. And I thought, okay, this was already, if you listen to my other podcasts, this is after my like spiritual awakening, after I meditated and did yoga every day for a year and my life fell apart and I surrendered. I just was really open. I was really cracked open at that point. And I was like, you know what? I don't have $300 to join Angel Team, but I'm going to do it anyway. So I'd never done anything like that. I hadn't taken like an online class since like really to get like a master's. Like it was like since college. I didn't take anything like that. And I don't know, I just had a good feeling about Kyle Gray, and I still do. I think he's wonderful. So I took his course. Say for the year you were part of Angel Team, and he did lives every month. You had a little access to a Facebook group. You got he taught you how to read oracle cards, and he also tuned you Reiki style with 11 archangels and Mother Mary. And that opened up a whole new world to me. I started working the oracle cards and found them so much easier. I was like, wow, this is like night and day. Like I felt like I could instantly know what the oracle cards are telling me, where the tarot always felt like I really had to work at it. And so I really loved doing that. At the same time, I just got interested in Reiki. And once we moved to Oregon, I was trained in Reiki. I'm a Reiki master, which opened me up even more, I would say, to my gifts. At the same time as working with the Kyle Gray stuff, I started working on opening my own Akashic records and getting access to that and learning to channel. I channel very easily now. It was quite a learning curve. And to channel means we all channel, just want to be clear. So if you read Big Magic, you'll see what I'm talking about. But basically, it's the idea that there's information out there, either in the collective consciousness or beyond, right? In the spirit world, however you want to say, that you can access. And the reason why I know I'm channeling and not just me is because it's things I never heard of. Or it'll be like words I wouldn't normally use, or information I have to like later look up and confirm that, oh yeah, that is true. And so it was all at once that I learned to channel. I learned to go into my Akashic records. I learned to read oracle cards. I learned to work with angels. I was attuned to Reiki. It was like all of these things within a span of a couple of years. And then suddenly I could read tarot very easily without the book. And I think there's a lot to it. I think it was confidence, right? The reading oracle cards was so much easier, to give me confidence. But I also think it was me really opening my clairsenses. Like I really Now, when I read for people, I get a lot of information. It comes in pictures. I do past life readings and I will see the past life and then I do my best to describe it. I will hear music, like I said. I will sometimes feel presence of loved ones or pets who have passed. I will get intuitive things when I give people Reiki, like you need to drink this tea, it'll help your stomach, or you should work with this crystal. And what was really nice about my Reiki master teacher is I asked her when I went back for my Reiki 2 and 3, when you give people Reiki, like, does information come in and what do you do with that? And she said for it always did, but for the longest time she wouldn't say anything because she just felt like maybe that was too far for a lot of people. Reiki is already a leap for a lot of people to have their energy moved and to believe in that. But for you to say that messages are coming in is even more. But then she said she just didn't feel like she should hold them back anymore. And she just started sharing, and people really loved that. And so, yeah, I think my fortune telling, the reason why I refer to myself as a fortune teller is because I think there's a lot of pressure in the term psychic. If I say to you, I'm a psychic, then you're like, okay, tell me my future. Or if I say to you, I'm a medium, it's like, okay, let me talk to my grandma. People think it's like, I think people treat a lot of psychics and mediums like an app in their phone or like a telephone. Like, let me just dial up and see what happens. And it's just not really fair. So if you say you're a fortune teller, it means I can use cards, I use pogs sometimes. I can use charms. I can channel. I can do like a mix of things. I can read tea leaves. Like I can just do a bunch of different stuff and not have to, it's more eclectic and I don't have to kind of say like I only read tarot or I'm only a psychic. I like to just say I kind of free flowing, right? Free form. And so really my journey is the lesson in this journey is that anybody can do this, but you have to really trust yourself. Like you can go at it the way I did, where I really studied and I didn't read for anybody but myself for 2 years. And I really put in the work and I meditated and I drew the cards. I mean, I really like immersed myself in the imagery. And sometimes I still will dream in the Pamela Coleman Smith imagery. Or sometimes when I'm using other cards, that image will pop in my mind, right? And I really sort of became one with them. I think that's one approach. Another approach is to see the tarot as a story. And that means that you can't just pull one, but you can. You can look at the image and tell me. It's a really good exercise for any cards. Look at the image and tell me what's happening. Like, pretend like you didn't ask a question. What's the story going on, right? So if you look at like the Tower card and you have these people, it's on fire and lightning has struck it and people are falling out the window, tell me the story. Tell me what happened before. Tell me what's happening now. Tell me what happened later. And that's a really great way to learn to use the cards because really like a good fortune teller is able to put all the cards and the images together into a story for the client. So the client's like, okay, this is the story of what's going on right now. So that's how I like to think of it. I don't like to say I'm a psychic either because the future is always changing. So with card readings, why I like them so much is I can give you insight that will help you change your reality maybe now, which will change the outcome that I saw in the cards. And so a lot of times, a lot of card reading spreads the thing will be like final outcome. And I just don't agree with that because the whole point of using the cards is to get the inside scoop so you can change the final outcome. And so I think that's, important to keep in mind too. I think other things that help people learn to read is meditating. And I know, I mean, I identify as neurodivergent. I know it's not easy to quiet your mind or be still. There's lots of forms of meditating, right? There's mantras, there's walking meditation. Like you don't have to just lay there in silence. Like that's that's not for me either, okay? Like it's not, but there's different ways because I think of meditating as opening. That's opening to divine information, right? So when you say prayers, you do spells, you do rituals, you are saying and putting what you want out there. In order to receive and listen, you need to meditate or you need to pull cards. Like how are they going to communicate back? It's a two-way street. If you're asking your angels for this, this, and this, you need to also open up for them to talk to you. well, girl, the reason why that's not going to happen is because you need to change this, this, and this, right? And that's where I think the card reading goes in. Currently, I read cards every day for myself. I don't know how many card decks. So for the longest time, I had the one card deck. And then I was really interested in Kyle Gray's Angels and Ancestors. Prior to that, so yeah, I had the one Universal Weight Tarot forever. And then found a bird tarot deck or oracle deck on Etsy. And I asked for it for my Christmas gift of 2019 because I was like, I've never had an oracle card. And it's really cute, but it's not for me. I didn't really click with it. It's not intuitive for me. And then I bought Angels and Ancestors, which is a really great way to learn Oracle, but also a great way, like a bridge between Oracle and Tarot, because it's kind of set up like a tarot. And I started working with that deck. And then at the time when I went through Angel Team, Kyle Deck created a mega deck where you took his angels out of angel prayers and you put them into his, I can't remember the name of the card deck now. It's yellow and has Ascended Masters and Angels in it. But anyway, you put them in there and you make kind of this mega deck of all Angels and Ascended Masters. And you use that to do readings, which I still use. And then I became a content creator for different publishers. And then that's when the library of card decks exploded. I also live near a metaphysical library and they get a lot of cool used card decks. And so I would buy them for like $5 or sometimes get them for free and just became a collector. I think they find me, honestly. I think the card decks like just want to be, I don't know what I'm building. I'm building some kind of library for some use at some point. But so I have like 100 card decks probably. And so I read from them every day. There's different things I like to do, just kind of change it up. But once a week, I'll ask, what do I need to know for the week ahead? And I like to pull from tarot or oracle decks that are a little more in depth, where they're a little tricky, or I just feel like they have a lot of layers, so that I can really kind of think about that as the week goes ahead. And sometimes I'll pull like angels, ascended masters, or goddesses and be like, who's with me this week, or who do I need to work with this week? Once a month, I use my tea leaf reading cards and I ask what I need to know for the month ahead. And then daily, I usually will do something like, what do I need to know today? Or I learned this from a book on Hecate, entering Hecate's cave, where it's what's a gate that's closing and what's a gate that's opening. And that's really good for tarot. So it's like basically asking today, what's the energy that's leaving and what's the energy that's coming in? And that's good to know because sometimes maybe you don't want the energy that's coming in and you can make some changes. I also like to read at every new moon and full moon, and I also like to read on all the Sabbats in general, and I write them all down, not the daily ones, unless something interesting pops up or crazy. I also will read before I work with somebody, like collaborate with someone, or before I start a project, is this the right project for me? I pretty much use cards all the time. The whole family uses cards. I'm happy to read for family and friends. And they really are such an integral part of my witchy practice now because I do use them for readings, but I also use them as altar cards for focuses of spells. I will use them to make grids on. I actually just had a video recently in our Coven where I showed people how to make a tiny crystal grid with little bottles of crystal chips on a tarot card and how to use, tarot and crystals together to make a grid. So it's really just at this point so deeply ingrained in my practice. It feels second nature. And I feel extremely comfortable reading for other people. Where when I first started, I had finished up my year of Kyle Gray's Angel Team, and I just would offer them on Instagram for whatever people wanted to pay. So sometimes someone would give me like nothing, and sometimes people would pay more than I would want them to pay. So it all kind of worked out. And I think if you're wanting to get some experience, but you don't want to like give your energy away for free, going that way is really great because you'll gain a lot of experience in kind of a low stakes manner. Someone is knowing that you're just starting out and they can pay what they want through Venmo or whatever. They aren't expecting a whole lot, right? And I really developed my skills that way before I actually started coming up with prices. And I always used my cards to come up with the prices as well, like asking, what's a good price and things like that. Um, but I love it. It's actually, I think I just recently got 100 sales on Etsy. So that means I've done 100 readings through there. And I did like 50 something prior to that with just practicing with other people. And people often, one question, and I do want to address this real quick, is people will ask, like, I don't understand why, like, Akashic Records readers, card readers, psychics, mediums charge. Like, it's a gift. Okay, but we need to eat too. And it is a gift. It's a gift of our energy and our time. And we need something back, and money's energy. And so that's why, in a perfect world, I would be the like local community herbalist slash witch slash fortune teller. And everyone would just come and get that stuff for me and bring me like a goat or bread or cheese, be like a great barter. But they wouldn't have come empty-handed. Like you come to get a healing, and when you're healed, you leave and you would bring me something back. Like it's just the way it works. And so unfortunately, like I'm still open to bartering, by the way. And I do that sometimes for readings. But and you need to get something back. So don't give your magic away for free. Um, ever. I just don't think that's necessary. And I try to keep my prices where I feel like a regular person can come get a reading from me, and they don't have to be like extremely wealthy, right, to do so. But I love it, and I think it's one of my favorite things. I love to write. I love to lead our coven. And I love to give people readings, especially when people write me back and tell me how spot on something is, or how it gave them insight and it helped them see something in a different way. It's so validating to me because I call on my own guides and I call on their guides when I give a reading. And it's exciting. I don't know. And it definitely, for me, I feel that I'm tapping into something greater than myself. And so that's why people are like, oh, aren't you drained? No, because I open sacred space, I give the reading, I call on guides, I cut cords, I let it all go, and then I usually eat something to ground myself. But it's not my energy. I'm the vessel during that whole experience. I'm just there letting it all happen, listening to the guides and the muses, and letting it go afterwards. So for me, it's not a draining experience. I actually usually feel energized after giving a reading, actually. If I feel too energized, I go outside and get grounded. But I hope that this inspires you, if you're not already dabbling in the art of fortune telling, that you try something. There's so many things out there. If you don't like cards, you don't have to use cards, right? If you're into meditating, then Akashic Records are great. There's palmistry, tea leaf, coffee readings, reading the clouds. I mean, it's really like, it's exciting. I think divination is so fun. You can make your own little, curios. Curios are so fun if you're a collector of like little tiny things. That's a fun one to do. Um, Pendulum. That's not a favorite of mine, but pendulum is out there as something. And I do have my own little oracle deck that I created called the Cosmic Creator Oracle. It'll be in limited edition print, available through my website soon. And it's just something I self-published with an artist friend of mine. We're really proud of it. And it's just really for us and for people that support us, right? It's not a huge thing. It's just more like we wanted to make it happen, so we did. So that's really fun, and that's kind of part of my journey as well. I just want to especially invite you, if you're listening to this as this podcast is coming out, I want to invite you to join our coven if you're not already in here. For the month of April, we're focusing on spiritual protection. And so I will be doing a live class where I cover all kinds of spiritual protection, from using tarot cards in protection to crystals, herbs, baths, charms. We'll really be going in depth how to make Florida water. I mean, like all different Bible verses. Really going to cover so many different ways to protect yourself spiritually so that you can always kind of cut and paste and pick and choose. That's the goal, is that people will walk away from that class so well versed in the different ways to protect their own energy that they'll be able to make a bunch of different choices and change it up whenever they want. So if you're not already in there, we'd love to have you. And thanks for listening to my cozy chat.